Hello, in this World of Warships video we are going to be looking at the St. Louis, which is the Tier 3 American cruiser, and well, it's very popular amongst most World of Warships players. I'm not actually a huge fan of the St. Louis. If you've seen my cruiser video, you'll have noticed that I've categorized this as an armoured cruiser, which officially it's not. The Americans called this a protected cruiser, even though it has an armoured belt, so technically it should be an armoured cruiser, but for an armoured cruiser it doesn't have as much armour as most of them, and it's got much smaller guns than most armoured cruisers had. So I suppose it's kind of in between a armoured cruiser and protected cruiser. But anyway, I don't particularly like the St. Louis because, well, a big part of it is that it's slow. Its top speed's only barely over 20 knots. And I suppose actually that's probably the big thing. The other thing, I mean the great things about the St. Louis, as you see here, it's got an 8-gun broadside, which, well, it's more than the Phoenix up at Tier 4, and I think it's equal to the Omaha at Tier 5. It's also got really good armour for a cruiser, especially down at Tier 3, and the ship can take a lot of damage. But those are the only good things about it. Other than the guns, there's nothing really fantastic about the St. Louis. And especially when you come up against battleships, I often wish it had torpedoes or some speed or manoeuvrability to, you know, essentially be able to do anything to the St. Louis, to the battleship. See here, I screwed up because I assumed the torpedo bombers weren't coming for me, so I didn't bother trying to dodge until it's much too late. And take 2 torpedo hits, lose half my health. I realised that they weren't actually going for me, they were going for the battleship, which was right behind me. So in all, that was actually probably good play on my part. I took 2 hits that would have hit the battleship otherwise, and that Congo Tier 5 battleships are way more important to my team than I, but I really would have appreciated having an extra half my health. Anyway, I've spotted an enemy cruiser. It's either a Phoenix or an Omaha, I can't really tell which from this view. But as you can see, my 8 guns on the broadside are firing away, and well, that enemy destroyer sunk its ally. And I'm guessing it did so deliberately based on how blatantly that looked. Not that enemy destroyer fires torpedoes at me, but I'm able to dodge them quite easily. And so now we have to focus on this battleship, which is charging straight down at us. And as I said, this is one of those situations when I really wish the St. Louis had torpedoes, because I can't escape this guy. I've basically got to sit here and fight it out. And, well, again, that enemy destroyer is killing its own team there. So, thanks dude, you're just ruining our fun. But, as you see, it's going to die here pretty soon. These 8 guns, while they suck at dealing with battleships, they are really good at killing the destroyers. I should point out, when I say 8 guns, it's 8 on the broadside, 14 in total. Okay. Enemy St. Louis, and here you'll be able to see the armour of these ships. I'm firing volleys at it, and it's firing broadsides at me. And neither of us, well, it's missed so far. I've got hits, but my hits aren't doing a lot of damage. So it's going to take a long time for either of us to kill the other one. Actually, one more thing I don't like about the St. Louis is that its guns are actually quite poorly placed. So you can't angle your ship very much at all if you want to fire a full broadside. Well, I've given up at shooting at St. Louis just because it's going to take too long, and instead focus on this destroyer, which is making a run for our aircraft carriers. So far, no luck. But I'm angled really poorly, I can only fire 1 gun at it. But, well, somebody managed to kill it with some torpedoes there, so we can go back to focusing on the St. Louis here. Fire some of my guns, and here's the rest of my broadside goes into action. And it looks like it's found my range because the shells are hitting. Whereas I'm missing because I'm not quite aiming high enough. There we go. Actually, if anything, I'm aiming too high now. When I get in engagements like this, I'm always kind of tempted to switch to high explosive, even though I know it does less damage. Just because I figure probably over the long run, knocking out its guns and engines and rudder and everything might actually give me enough of an edge to win this thing. But it never actually works out in practice. I think it might, but it never does. Okay, our friendly battleship, as you can see, is closed in with the St. Louis, so it should be putting some fire in. And there you go, the battleship manages to kill it. And well, I'm down to about a quarter of my health, actually a sixth of my health. And unfortunately, I'm going to be sailing towards the enemy at my top speed of, what, 22-ish knots? Which unfortunately is going to take a little while. And as I say, this is probably the big reason why I don't like the St. Louis. I mean, you get the situation in all ships where you essentially kill the enemies near you and you've got to sail towards, you know, the other enemies. But it takes a very long time in the St. Louis, which I prefer it wouldn't. See, that destroyer only managed to sink 2 of its allies, but still, especially since, well, no. Actually, our team was outnumbered to start with, so I suppose it was evening the odds. But not really, because I think we had, yeah, we had more battleships, and I think better battleships as well, so it was actually a pretty even game. Okay, that cruiser and the aircraft carrier are just outside of my maximum firing range. Oh, another thing I don't like about the St. Louis, it's actually got a pretty short firing range. It's about 10-ish kilometres, we saw there, 10.4 kilometres is the range. Actually, I suppose that's not bad for tier 3, but if you ever come up against, you know, battleships, if you're in a tier 5 game or so, you're going to be massively outranged, and you can only close that range at 22.2 knots. Okay, this aircraft carrier's in range, and it's not moving. And, well, I know where your citadel is, Mr. Aircraft Carrier. You'll see me turning my ship quite sharply to bring the rest of my guns to bear. And 2 citadel hits there. One more citadel hit. So that aircraft carrier is taking a lot of damage from my fire. Well, looks like I destroyed its engine as well. Will my shells beat their torpedoes? Yes!
Enemy aircraft carrier destroyed.
So there's another kill for me. And I always aim to get 100 shells on target in this ship. Which seems like a lot, but this thing fires so many guns and fires so quickly that it doesn't actually take that long. See, I'm a bit short. I believe 88 so far, because I've got to add the citadel hits to the regular hits. And there's only one enemy ship left, it's this aircraft carrier hiding in the corner. And we've just got to close the last 2 or so kilometres so we can come in range. Ooh, those enemy torpedo bombers are doing a lot of damage to that battleship of ours. Actually, they just sunk it. And not quite in range yet. There you go, just came in range. Fire off some shells. But there are torpedoes coming at me, so I'd better dodge them. Got one more hit. But that aircraft carrier was also destroyed by torpedoes. Well, not also, it was destroyed by torpedoes before I get a chance to fire some more. So I didn't quite get my 100 shots, but still managed 2,400 experience and 91,000 credits. Best on my team, which I was actually a bit surprised at, because I didn't really feel like I did so much, just because I spent so much of the game sailing towards the enemy, and that enemy destroyer sunk, you know, the ships I was trying to sink for me, which is very unfortunate. But as you see here, I actually managed to do 56,000 damage with 89 hits, 62 of which penetrated the armour. The shells aren't very big, so they don't always penetrate. And I only took 20,000 damage myself, maybe 21,000 there. So I did twice as much damage as I took, which, anyway, you look at it, it's pretty good. So well, here's the stats for the St. Louis, and as I say, it's basically an armoured cruiser despite officially not being it. You see it's got up to 76mm of armour, which is good for tier 3. There are more heavily armoured cruisers in the higher tiers, but not that much more, to be honest. But you can see all the weaknesses here as well. It's not particularly manoeuvrable, it's slow, it's easily detected, it's got no anti-aircraft guns, so it's at tier 3. I actually have managed to shoot down one aircraft in this St. Louis. Aircraft carrier was just hovering its fighters above me for long enough that my 8 machine guns were actually able to hit something and kill it. And well, yeah, I was going to talk a bit about armoured cruisers, just because there aren't any proper armoured cruisers in the game, and they're kind of interesting to add for balance purposes, because I can't actually tell whether they'll be really overpowered or really weak, because, you know, most armoured cruisers, they basically had the same speed as the St. Louis here, which is to say they were very slow and also not very manoeuvrable. They were more heavily armoured, so they'd be more resilient than St. Louis. They also had bigger guns, although they usually didn't have a broadside of 8 of them. So you kind of think that they would be essentially more powerful than the St. Louis here. So, you know, you lean towards overpowered, but the thing is, they're going to be very vulnerable to battleships and aircraft carriers. Like, they're basically going to have all the weaknesses of battleships, in that they're not going to be very manoeuvrable, and they're also going to be very slow. But they're not going to have the strength of the battleship, in that they've got big guns that can do a lot of damage, and instead they're going to have, well, weaker guns than battleships. Kind of stronger guns than light cruisers, but not particularly stronger, especially when you take out the fact that the armoured cruisers' guns will probably fire a bit slower. So I'm kind of looking at them and thinking they'll be really good at killing light cruisers, but kind of vulnerable, and probably also destroyers, but very vulnerable to enemy battleships and aircraft carriers, and well, also destroyers that are able to get torpedoes off at fairly long range. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to when armoured cruisers get introduced into the game. The Wargaming developers did say a while ago that they would, so hopefully they're still thinking about it. Just because it would be an interesting kind of scenario to play out, to see how the armoured cruisers, how they would be in game. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this look at St. Louis and this video. I'll see you all next time.